My wife and I travel internationally with one of the largest and most successful touring illusion shows in the country. That means almost every night somewhere on the planet, I have the privilege of taking my audiences on a journey to the brink of impossibility. And sometimes I bring them back. Arts advocates often opine the power of the arts in our society, about their ability to transform and inspire and challenge and build community. That's what we preach in the arts community. As a magician, an artist, I do believe the arts have the ability to make a difference in the realities in which we live, learn, work, and heal. In earlier times, magicians were called the scientists of show business. It makes us sound a little boring when you throw science in with what we do, but that's what we were called because we were daring, we were adventurous, we were willing to take risks on impossibilities with absolutely no guarantee of success. Reminds me a lot of people today, those visionaries, many of whom that you're going to hear from today, those outside of the box thinkers. I would imagine there are probably some of you who are exactly those magicians of show business, those scientists of show business. I think people have the wrong idea about magic. They think of it like a comic book, where a guy in a cape comes out and twirls his mustache, throws his hand, says a magic word, there's this giant puff of smoke, and something magical happens on the stage. Which is why I'm standing here without a cape or a mustache or that giant puff of smoke. Those of us who grew up in magic, we know what it's all about. It was the lure of knowing a secret, of having a special talent, being able to attract an audience and tell a story and offer them something exotic and interesting, like this little box. When I was a kid, every magic trick looked something like this, a fancy painted box. And when we wanted to make it really special, really magical, we'd put a dragon on the side. Or we'd paint Chinese characters all over it, because that meant it came from someplace far, far away and had special magical powers. We never bothered to ask ourselves what magic boxes in China must look like. Do they have the ABCs? I'm not really sure. I wanted to show you this little box because it reminds me of a lot of the people with disabilities I've come to know. The ones who've been placed inside the box by the people around them. The ones who don't quite fit in because society has already decided the size and the shape of the box so that we all fit so nice and neatly on the same size shelf. Of course, all of those of us who work with the disability community, we understand that problem. As long as we keep defining the box, only certain things will fit inside. Over the last few years, we've been changing our point of view. What exactly is the box? Who exactly is supposed to fit inside? Maybe we've had it backwards, twisted, upside down. Maybe it's not about the people at all. But our perception that changes everything. Sometimes it takes something just that simple to get you to look at something in a different way. And sometimes those things that bring us back around make us understand why magic can be so cool, why lots of kids find magic to be very, very, very appealing, why even big kids like me find these mysteries to be exotic and interesting. Special and magical. I've learned to look beyond the box, to ignore the obvious containers. But I've also learned through my work that by teaching some kids with disabilities a few simple little magic tricks, you can completely change their perspective, break away the box that surrounds them, giving them an entirely new set of skills and abilities. Those of us who work in magic know that there's a process, a procedure for learning a magic trick. My friend and mentor was an amazing magician named Doug Henning. Doug had a very specific formula for learning a magic trick that I think speaks loudly to those of us who work in the disability community. He would say this: the difficult must become habit. Habit becomes beautiful. Beautiful becomes magic. As an artist, I think it's remarkable that what I do to entertain people also has the ability to impact the quality of someone's life. That conviction was confirmed very early in my career when I myself was involved in a bad accident. The car I was in was crushed by a tractor trailer. I woke up in neurological intensive care with a closed brain injury and a spinal cord injury. I spent the next several months in rehabilitation working very, very hard to regain the skills that I'd lost as a result of the accident. The process was long, it was frustrating, but mostly it was incredibly boring. Many times I lacked the motivation to do what the therapist needed me to do in order to reach some of those incredibly important therapeutic goals. Fortunately, I had really, really wonderful therapists who encouraged me, motivated me, and I was able to realize a full recovery. But when it was all done, I remember walking into the office of the director of rehabilitation at my hospital in Virginia, and I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Now, I have since learned that is not the way you talk to professionals in the field. But I could blame it on the fact that I had a brain injury, so they cut me a little bit of slack. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and as a result of that accident, I had the privilege of working and collaborating with a number of therapists to develop a treatment program that uses simple little magic tricks as a fun and motivating way for patients to reach therapeutic goals and improve cognitive and motor skills. Based on a tremendous amount of research, the American Occupational Therapy Association approved and endorsed the use of magic as an authentic method of achieving therapeutic goals. And today, the concepts of magic therapy are being used in more than 2,000 hospitals and rehab centers in over 30 countries around the world. A few months ago, Sho mentioned this, I produced a short documentary called Powerful Medicine, Simply Magic that gives voice to amazing kids who, with disabilities, who magic has been an important part of their therapeutic process. The message has resonated not only with audiences, but judges around the world at international film festivals, and we just picked up our 7th Best Short Documentary Award at the Madrid International Film Festival last week, so we were really, really excited. I'd like to introduce you to one of the young boys from that film. He's an amazing kid. His name is Tristan. He's from the United Kingdom, and he has hemiplegia.
They always say, like, why do you have a broken hand? They always say that. I don't have a broken hand, do I? It's just hemiplegia, isn't it? Welcome to the magic show. I am going to make the ball drop through the cup.
Such a cool kid. Each of us found our way into our respective fields through different paths, for different reasons. Maybe you always wanted to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, in the same way that I always wanted to be a magician. I can remember when I was 5 years old telling my mom, when I grow up, I'm going to be a magician. She patted me on the head and said, you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. So, great parents. For me, my specialized work with children with disabilities happened quite by accident around 2009. I'd been conducting some training with some therapists in a hospital system in South Florida, and when I was done, they asked me to spend a couple of days working with some of the kids in the clinic. I found myself working with a lot of children with problems with dexterity and behaviors and rigidity and communication skills, and this time, I asked myself, isn't there a better way to help these kids learn? So I spent the next 2 years reading, my crew thought I was crazy, reading education textbooks, academic papers, research papers, academic literature, and in 2011 I went back to school and I completed my certification in Autism Studies. I wanted to have a better understanding of how children and learn in the uniqueness of those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I was confident that there was a way that magic tricks could be used to help them improve the skills that they find challenging in exactly the same way that we were using magic tricks in a therapeutic setting. I've spent a great deal of time developing a very specific protocol of magic tricks for use in rehabilitation and education, and have been working closely with academics and medical researchers around the world to underpin this work with some robust scientific research. Much of that research has been published in some peer-reviewed journals in special education, teacher education, hand therapy, physical rehab, and currently I'm engaged in psychometrically validating an assessment tool for teachers that will measure student growth in 5 dimensions of learning through arts-integrated interventions. The importance of quantifying what we do, of quantifying growth and progress is so critical if we expect people, governments, organizations to support that we do with the work that we do in the arts and the importance of the arts across our lifespan. The statistics for all of this is overwhelming. In the United States, 1 in 6 children is born with a developmental disability. Even more dramatic is the almost epidemic rise in the prevalence rate of autism spectrum disorders. 1 in 68 children are diagnosed with autism. 1 in 68 in the United States. In some countries, that prevalence rate is even higher. In South Korea, it's 1 in 35. Those statistics are staggering. They are going to dramatically change the landscape of America, the landscape of the planet in the coming years. In countries throughout the world, researchers are scrambling to bring together educators, physicians, therapists, and related specialists for the need to bring out research interventions to guide, encourage, and meaningfully educate children with autism and with learning disabilities. As a result of working in literally hundreds of classrooms all over the world, I've noticed that one of the biggest challenges for educators, therapists, and parents is finding activities that are engaging and meaningful for their children. But even more challenging is finding activities that allow for interdisciplinary collaborations between speech-language pathologists, educators, psychologists, counselors, and occupational therapists to help children with disabilities achieve their desired outcomes. I believe strongly in the effectiveness of using magic tricks in the classroom because the art of illusion has the ability to capture and hold the attention of people of all ages, and children are especially intrigued by the seeming impossibility of a magic trick. And that curiosity is international in its scope.
Amanda.
There is a growing body of evidence that suggests that children, all children, including children with disabilities, may learn and retain information more effectively when they're taught creatively and allowed to be creative. True teaching is the art of awakening the natural curiosity of young minds. This is what most of the kids look like when they learn their first magic trick. If I was teaching you one today and took that picture, all of you would look like that as well. So, parents, teachers, and mentors can improve the skills and encourage innovative thinking in children with disabilities by nurturing that curiosity and inquisitiveness. Curiosity should be the focus of education. And every day, we should be challenged. And we should be challenging our children with novel experiences that beg us to pose brilliant sorts of questions. Studies have shown that children who learn creatively score better on cognitive flexibility, cognitive self-control, and working memory, all attributes of executive function, which has been consistently linked to academic achievement. When we allow children with special needs to learn creatively, we remove the stressors of being right that are so pronounced in their lives. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do it this way. It has to be this way. You remove those stressors of being right and you give them an opportunity to take risks and to make mistakes. And through those mistakes, they develop self-determination, flexibility, adaptability, critical thinking, problem-solving skills. Yet in spite of all of this evidence, tons of this evidence, we've still reached the conclusion that lecture, rote memorization, and standardized testing is the best way for all of us to learn. And we're losing out creativity and authentic learning experiences. That's the trade. Finding ways for all children to engage in purposeful activities. Purposeful activities can be fun, right? They don't have to just be boring. They can be fun while providing opportunities for them to learn functional skills, which are so important for our kids with disabilities. Functional skills and academic content should be an extremely important objective for our education system. There is a new, exciting educational framework. We've heard a lot of PBLs, project-based learning, problem-based learning. There's a new one that's called phenomenon-based learning, which I happen to love because magic fits so nicely into phenomenon-based learning. It supports the idea that if I can teach you a magic trick and pique your curiosity becomes the driver for learning. The picture of the little boy or even this little girl here working with the paper clips, this paperclip trick, while it is a pretty awesome trick, has embedded in it 22 physics vocabulary words, 9 physics formulas, and 3 math formulas. So by coming into a classroom and teaching this magic trick to students, they can pull all the layers back, find out all the academic content that's necessary inside the trick, but at the same time, they're working on motor skills, fine motor skills, planning and sequencing, organizing tasks and movements, concentration and focus. And when they're all done, they have this really awesome magic trick that they can show somebody. In the fall of 2014, research that was released by the University of California at Davis, this was good research, found that high levels of curiosity could facilitate learning. We did a whole research project on that. But now we know it to be true. If they just could have asked any of us, we probably could have told them that. We know that curiosity triggers motivation, which is another critical component for success, especially for children with disabilities. For instance, many children with disabilities frequently appear to lack the motivation to engage in conversation, to learn new tasks, to initiate relationships, or to ask questions. Motivation is so critical in helping them optimize their attention when performing tasks that they might not find intrinsically motivating. The attraction of learning a magic trick can help move them through some of those challenges. This was never more clearly demonstrated to me than a few years ago when I was working with this little boy in South Florida. He was 9 years old. His therapist brought him into the room, and it was just me and him. I was sitting on this side, he was sitting on this side, little bench in between us. His occupational therapist was there, his speech therapist was there, and his dad was there because this was a new experience for the little boy. They didn't tell me anything about him. I knew nothing. So going in, I bring out my very first trick. I perform the trick, and I look at him because I'm going to teach this to him, and he's this far away from me. He leans all the way over. His nose almost touches my nose. And then he just turns his head, and he backs away. Doesn't say a word. I'm like, okay. So I started to move on to the next trick, and he goes, wait, teach me that trick. So I gave him his piece of rope, and we started to learn the trick. Over the next 20 minutes, we had engaged in an incredible conversation. Where do I put my hands? What do I do next? Teach me the next trick. Over and over and over again. I noticed at one point that his dad had his iPhone over my shoulder, and he was videotaping the entire thing, which I thought was pretty cool. Getting your kids' first magic tricks on video, that's pretty nice. When it was all over and the little boy got up and slapped me a high five and went off with his occupational therapist, I stood up. And I could hear his dad crying behind me. And as I turned around, his dad gave me this enormous hug. And he said, that's the first time in 9 years I've ever heard my son speak. It was profound. The speech language pathologist said to me, none of us knew that he had the capacity to hold a conversation. As we talked about it, as we explored it further, we realized how important motivation really, really was in engaging this child. Up until this point, the speech therapist said, I've just been trying to get him to say my name. For 3 years, I've been trying to get him to say my name. And I'm thinking, because people accuse me of being a little bit on the spectrum, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, he's probably thinking, if you don't know your name, me telling you isn't going to help a whole lot. So, I don't know. It's that whole motivation of, I know what you want me to do, and I know I can do it, but I see absolutely no reason why I should. So, here's what we do know about magic. We know that learning to perform a magic trick influences 3 very important areas. It's about dexterity. If you can't manipulate the props, you can't do the trick. So a child that learns to perform a magic trick concentrates on all of the skills, the fine motor skills and the gross motor skills necessary to manipulate the props. The second thing that we know that it's all about motivation. When you give the child the ability to do something that can't be equaled by their peers, a magic trick, it becomes such a powerful motivator for them that they're going to work through some of the challenges that they're going to meet along the way. And the last thing that we know is it works on socialization. Magic doesn't exist in a vacuum. Once you learn a magic trick, you instantly want to show it to somebody else. Why wouldn't you? It would be so cool. So we know that it works on dexterity, we know it works on motivation, we know that it works on socialization. But teaching magic is about more than simply teaching magic tricks. It's really about teaching the habits that go along, with thinking, like how to know what your thought processes are, how to understand your mistakes and figure out the next path on those. Many of the greatest benefits of learning a magic trick happen in the metacognitive and self-system processes. Part of improving student growth is helping children gain confidence in their abilities to do things that you might not think they can do. This is especially true for children with disabilities who are often thought not to have the capacity to generate any kinds of new ideas. Children need to be taught to recognize their ability to accomplish more than what they might realize. The more they believe in those abilities, the more apt they are to be able to attempt new things and become successful in those endeavors. The main limitation on what children can do is what we believe they can't do. Sometimes my most memorable moments are grounded in the unexpected. Take a look at this guy. I never in a million years thought that he would be able to learn this magic trick. And what happens at the end is when you pull this, these paper clips go flying up in the air and you have to catch them when they come back down. Alex not only did the trick, but launched the paper clips to the top of the room, and when they came back down, he flipped his hand and caught the paper clips. He was incredible. Without a doubt, one of the most spectacular kids I've ever worked with. We know that magic helps build self-confidence, self-efficacy, and reshapes their self-concept. Without those things, we know the possibility of living a successful, productive life decreases dramatically. Teaching magic in the context of an educational or therapeutic activity can allow children to experience academic success, as well as change the way people perceive them and help them with social acceptance. Learning magic has a special appeal for children because it gives them a chance to do something that can't be equaled by their peers. This can promote socialization and personal growth. Humans are designed to seek relationships with an emphasis on belonging, being recognized, listened to, and noticed. Marzano writes that many studies support the idea that learning is most effective when it's social and collaborative. By integrating magic tricks into the education process, students can engage in purposeful conversation, and they depend on each other's thinking to enrich their understanding and construct meaning. This cooperative learning process is a valuable experience for children. Helping one another stirs their creativity and builds positive relationships. But it also increases their sense of control over their environment, something that's so critical, and improves their self-esteem. This can be a transformative experience for a child with a disability. Learning is deepest when children have the capacity to represent what they've learned to others. In the performative aesthetic learning process, knowledge can be communicated through symbolic forms, and the performance of a magic trick is a motivating, skillful, and appropriate way for demonstrating what children have learned.
I'm very excited to see them do this because I have some kids who are very negative about themselves, that they can't do anything, and to watch them get excited about being able to do something is just very important to me, because so many times they say I can't, and I'm hearing them right now going I can.
People, if you're watching this, try this at home. Please, try this at home.
They're never without personality. In our society, we talk a great deal about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think we've lost sight of what those words mean when it comes to individuals who have abilities that are different than the rest of us. As a magician, I'm a master of reality and illusion. It is my job to make things appear differently than what they might seem. But that shouldn't be true for people. Those who have disabilities are often thought to be different than the rest of us. They're not. They have hopes and dreams just like you and me. But their futures are often molded by the attitudes and perceptions we have about who they are and what they're capable of doing. As a global society, it's time for us to start focusing on what they can do and stop bringing up what we think they can't do. Over the last 6 years, I've had the privilege of partnering with arts presenters around the globe to build new alliances in their communities through imaginative collaborations that combine the arts with education and healthcare. This work has changed me as an artist. It has changed me as a human being, reinforcing my belief in the power of the arts to transform people's lives in ways that reach beyond our stages. This is what we do. This is what I do. This is why the arts are not just an essential part of our communities, but a critical part of our community. And if I believe that, as an artist, if I really believe that, then it is not just a privilege to do this sort of work. It is my responsibility to do this sort of work. I'd like to leave you with just a thought. Somebody said this to me. It was written in a newspaper article, and I think it sums up so well what I believe. They said this: magic wands don't always belong with black hats and rabbits. Sometimes they belong in hospitals and school systems where special hands learn tricks, and the magic, the real magic, is in the healing. Thanks very much for your time.